Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. You're here in force, both on IT and in presence, a sign that COVID has particularly moved on. So look, at this morning, I want to start with, particularly, it's all what I have to say is regarding budgets. And I want to say, to be fair to government, we certainly have an input of funding from government that would depict a first-class health service. And I suppose what some would say is that, albeit that we're putting in 21 billion into the health service, we're getting a third world service. And I understand and I accept that health is a massive area. It is a massive area, and I accept that it can't be easy to manage. But if we just take what Mr. Reid has said there, and I am directing the question to Mr. Watt, but I think if you look at what Mr. Reid has said in response to your query, Chair, that we have over 75s going to A&E and having to wait 14 hours, I think that would probably be reflective of the home care support scheme, the home care package not working. And I think that's where we have government who, in fairness, as I say, have allocated an extra 1 million hours to the home care support scheme. But there's no delivery on those hours. And now we're seeing the results of that in our A&E. And Mr. Watt, you're top dog now. And I just want to ask you, what specific actions have you taken to ensure that that vast allocation of funds results in the delivery of a first world health service?
Thanks, Deputy. Thanks for the question. And your question, I guess, is the critical one. How can we collectively?
How can
well,
you?
yeah, me and the Department and the Minister and the Government collectively, along with Paul's team, ensure that we are getting value for money and we're getting impact for the spending. There are many different dimensions to your question. I think, in very straightforward terms, I think the agenda is to deliver on sláinte care and the reforms. The reforms in terms of ensuring that the increased capacity to deliver, in terms of extra activity in the hospitals across all the different areas of responsibility, to ensure that there's a shift to the left, that, as Paul mentioned, that there's more care provided in the community and closer to people's homes. And it's really to deliver on sláinte care and the reforms, and to enhance the overall value for money, productivity, effectiveness, efficiency of the system. And that's what our department is doing in terms of working with Paul and his team in terms of driving the reform agenda across the health system. Because I agree with you, the health system is well funded, there are resources there, and what we need to do is to ensure that it delivers better for our citizens. You mentioned the issue around ED, the Chairman mentioned it, and everybody acknowledges that's not acceptable. There are also issues around waiting lists that are too long, there are people waiting too long for treatment. So everybody shares the analysis. I guess the answer is that we are implementing sláinte care and driving the reforms. I think everybody supports those reforms, and I think that's welcome that we have a clear consensus on it. And our job is with Minister and Government and the various teams we have in the Department each to deliver on that reform agenda.
Okay, the question was, what actions have you taken to ensure the implementation and that there is an efficient use of the allocation of funding? So let me be clearer. We'll move on to mental health. 23 million euros allocated. Now, widely reported in the newspapers, but I don't want to go there. Where I want to go is, at 23 million, we have growing waiting lists in our health service, particularly in the area of CAMHS. You mentioned leadership and policy direction when in your opening statement. I can only see the direction going one way, backwards. So I'll ask, in relation to that 23 million, can you tell me what actions you've taken as the SecGen on a huge salary? And that's as much as I'm going to say. What actions have you taken to ensure that that allocation of 23 million extra delivers a service that reflects a first world health service in mental health?
So thanks, Deputy. So I think the 23 million, I think, refers to the new service developments. I think the increase in mental health spending for next year is 56 million. So there's an increase across the board. So in effect, that goes to improve services, and I think a large part of it is the recruitment of staff. So It's our job in the department, as part of the estimates process, to ultimately negotiate, finalise the settlement in terms of each of the budget lines, include mental health. That money is allocated then to the HSE and then distributed to the different service entities within the HSE. So our role in the department is to negotiate in terms of the budget, is to set the overall policy, and then to engage in oversight of how that money is spent and how the services are delivered. So our role is an oversight role. The HSE obviously is in the business of actually delivering the services. So
if, just to be clear, the oversight role you're saying doesn't include the fact that once the money is allocated, it's your job to see that it's spent efficiently and delivers a service. That's not your role. Am I wrong?
So the services.
Now, Mr. We don't have time, you see, Mr. Watt, and I'm limited. So that's kind of a yes or no. Is it your role to ensure that once the money is allocated, it delivers an efficient first world health service?
So it's our job to ensure.
Your job as SecGen is what I'm asking, Mr. Watt. Is that a description of your role?
So yeah, our role in the department is twofold. It's to set overall policy across the health system, which we endeavour to do, and then put in place the mechanisms for oversight of delivery of the services.
Can you tell me again, then I'll ask the question, what actions have you taken to ensure the implementation of the funding to deliver the health service? What actions, since you came in as SecGen for, I think, what now, 18 months? Can you tell me? Well, I'll tell you what. Sure. Which of these best describes your actions? Would you say you've identified the problem and you don't know what to do about it? A. B. Would you say you haven't identified a problem? Or C. Would you say that you're on a large salary and get paid regardless and just don't care? Because we are seeing no improvement in relation to the health service. And I've asked you now in two areas, CAMS and the Home Care Support Scheme, what actions you've taken to implement the 1 million extra hours granted by government. To be fair, government are doing their bit. We're not starved of funding, but we seem to have a third world health service with growing waiting lists. So is it A, B or C, Mr. Watt?
Sorry.
A was, have you identified a problem and you don't know what to do about it? B, have you not identified a problem, in which case it's getting worse? Or C, are you paid a large salary, which you get regardless, and just don't care?
Deputy, no, just ask you to treat the witnesses with respect.
Well,
no. By all means, robust question, but continue.
Sorry. Are you just paid regardless, and it doesn't bother you?
Thanks, Deputy, for the question. So the challenge within the health system, as we all know, is that there are increasing demands every year on foot of primarily demographic change, technological change, the greater availability of procedures and options for people to improve their health and well-being. Our role in the department, along with our colleagues in the HSE, is to improve the services, and that's what we're trying to do. And I would contend, and we can discuss it this morning, very significant improvements in services are taking place. This year, in relation to waiting lists, it's proposed there will be more waiting list related activity, over 1.7 million, than we've ever had. And the expectation is that we'll start to see waiting lists come down, notwithstanding the difficulties caused by COVID in the first quarter of the year. So our job is to work with the Minister in driving change and reform within the health system, and that's what I do and my colleagues do.
Well, why to tell me in relation to the 1 million hours that were given for the home care support, what actions have been put in place to ensure delivery of those? Because you see, when I question in the Dáil the Minister or the Taoiseach on leaders' questions, and I say that we have increased the number of people waiting on home care support by over 100 since they gave an extra 1 million hours, the Taoiseach comes back and tells me that we've given the 1 million hours. So now, Mr. Watt, you're the SecGen in the Department of Health. Can you tell me what actions you've taken to ensure the delivery of the 1 million? If not, I suppose we could just regard the Minister or the Taoiseach standing up, or even on Budget Day, Chair, the delivery of the budget as complete and utter spin. So I'm only asking a simple question, Mr. Watt. What actions have you taken in regards that? I'm making it simple for you.
Yeah. So in relation to home cares, I think there were over 20 million actually delivered last year in total, which I think is the largest ever largest ever total of home care hours. There is a challenge this year in relation to delivering on the targets that are set out, and I think it's primarily a recruitment issue. It's about recruiting staff into the area to deliver the services. There is a group set up which is looking at how can we improve recruitment, and that's something that yourselves and the HSE are involved with. So in terms of the home care, there's a commitment. The government have allocated money. Last year there was the highest ever. There's an increase in hours again, and we're delivering on that. And the challenge is to try ensure that we can get the staff to deliver the service, and that's the
I suppose, Mr. Watt, to be fair, do you regard yourself as a problem solver? Would you regard yourself as a problem solver?
So what we all try to do is
I'm sorry, Chair, that's a binary question. Is that a yes or a no? Do you regard yourself, Mr. Watt, as a problem solver? That's a yes or no?
Well, yeah, it's my job to solve problems. Yeah, of course.
Appreciate that.
That's
so,
my job, yes.
And I've heard the problems. What I'm not getting from you are the solutions, because I believe the expectation from this committee and from the public at large is that we appoint people into positions to solve the problems, not to tell us what they are all the time, but to come up with solutions that reflect the fact that we have doubled the health budget. We have the 4th richest health budget. There's no other way to put it per capita in the world. I thought that was in Europe. It's worse. It's in the world. And yet we probably are reflective of a third world service. I'm asking you again, as the problem solver, as the SecGen of the Department of Health, what actions or what have you brought to the table, Mr. Watt? Because I have to ask the question, do you yourself feel you're in the appropriate position? Do you feel yourself, you know, if you can tell me the actions that you've taken that can deliver on the million hours, that can deliver on just the 23 million that was widely
would it be
reported.
helpful, just for a second, would it be helpful, because I know that's a particular issue which is of concern in relation to home care, would it be helpful if we actually got an outline of what hours, briefly, what hours has been provided?
Not really. It's only, I'm only using that as an example, Chair. I mean, this is reflective across. If you want me to go into the CDNT and the debacle in relation to the Child Disability Network, we don't have a full CAMS team anywhere in the country. That's reflective of the budget. We don't have the Child Disability Network teams. It's a joke. I had a child here, 9 years old, whose application for a wheelchair sat on a desk for 9 weeks. I have anorexic patients, 23 in Wexford, who don't have a paediatric dietitian added to the CAMS service. I also had a clinical nurse specialist, 13 years experience, moved from one CAMS unit to another with no explanation, who sat for 2 weeks with no handover, no files, could see no patients, no computer, and then was escorted by a security guard when he returned to get his belongings. Mr. Watt, these are the questions that the public want answered, and as the Public Accounts Committee, I think we should be working together to get the answers. The only thing is, the difference is you are paid a large salary, and that's not to be derogatory, that's a fact, and it's a salary that got much publicity. So I'm asking you, what actions have you brought to the table to ensure delivery of all these things? Because if I was given €1 million to go from A to B, and I arrived, having received it at A, and I arrived at B with no money, I would want to be able to give an explanation, rather than say it just went down a black hole. So that's what I'm asking. On behalf of the public here in the Public Accounts Committee, what actions have you taken to ensure delivery of the service that warrants 21 billion?
1 minute left, Deputy.
So, as I mentioned, Deputy, earlier, my job is to run the department, is to set out with the Minister the policies, is to agree the budgets, allocate the budgets, to engage in the oversight mechanisms that we are engaged in. I think we have reformed the oversight mechanisms within the department, working with our colleagues in the HSE. I think the budget settlement for this year is one of the largest increases we've ever had. There's very significant change and very significant improvement in the system across a whole variety of different areas, which I think we can all acknowledge. Of course, our health system, like every other health system, have challenges, ongoing challenges, and our job is to do what we can with the money we allocated to address those challenges. And my leadership role is to run the department and manage the department to ensure that we can do the best in terms of both the policy and then the delivery of it.
Just for the benefit of, in fairness to the deputy, right? Just see the issue of, there's two issues there she raised in relation to the CAMS teams. We all know there's gaps, and we've seen the figures there recently. Just in a few sentences, what's been done to, and I know there's no, you can't flick a light switch, I understand that, but could you just outline, either Paul or yourself, just briefly, for the benefit of the deputy and the Public Accounts Committee, what's been done on that issue, just so she has some answer, some idea that there's progress being made. Would that be helpful?
Oh, well, I want Mr. Watt is the head
whoever
of the
wants to take
department.
it,
It's Mr. Watt as far as.
Just a few brief comments, because I think it's important just from public's perspective, and I'll try to address the mental health and home sports as well with my colleagues here. Just firstly, I would disagree that Ireland has a third world service. I have spent.
I did say some would say.
So, Chair, if I can, I would disagree. It's important from a public perspective. This sometimes third out cliches are not right.
No, Chair,
Sorry, Chair,
I disagree with that.
Sorry, Chair, if I can say, I've spent many years, I spent a long time in third world services and developing countries in a previous role I had with Troca, and I know what a third world service is like. We are recognised as having the longest life expectancy by any higher OECD measure. And sorry, Chair, I think it's important for the record, because the public, and we're trying to recruit people and retain people into a public service that has many challenges in our health service, but some of those references to we have a third world service are not correct. They're not borne out by life expectancy. They're not borne out by cancer care, cardio care. We do accept.
Borne out, Mr. Reid, by waiting lists.
We have radical challenges.
By waiting lists.
Sorry, and that's a shared issue. I do agree.
I have to.
I just want to say that, Chair.
Mr. Reid, I know. Hold on now for a second, right? I have to try and chair this meeting, and there's a number of speakers here to get in, right? And in fairness, I want to try and be fair to yourselves as well. We all know it's a challenge. I think everybody in this room wants things to go in one direction to improve our health system, right? There's no argument about that, whether it's the deputies or yourselves or officials, right? There's no disagreement about that. But particularly, right, because, what we want to know, I think what we want to know in relation to the CAMS team, for example, because she did focus on it, and she did get an answer.
I'll ask my colleagues just to address it. In fairness to the department,
the efforts that are being made specifically, and I don't want to be speaking for you because you're well at speak for yourself, but it's just I'm observing what's going on there. And, specifically what's been done to fill those gaps. I know it's a pipeline issue. I think that's what it appears like, workforce planning, long-term planning and all that. But just briefly, that she has some idea.
Chair, there's no brief answer. I mean, I've asked the question a number of times and didn't get, but I do think it's important.
I'm just trying to get an answer, one answer.
Well, no, I think because my time is up and I don't want to take from everyone else, somebody else can ask the question. But what I want to say is I can't help but feeling that with regard to our health sector, there's a need for a restatement and a reaffirmation of the constitutional structures that underpin the workings of both this committee and Dáil Éireann. And I think that the Dáil and the PAC they're not some ad hoc forum, that you can say to be tolerated or suffered by civil servants or public servants that come in and duck and dive when it comes to answers. I want to see a restatement and a rebalancing of the roles and the functionings of accounting officers and the Public Accounts Committee, and a recognition and an appreciation of the role of the PAC. That's what I want to see, Chair. And then we might get somewhere in the health service.
No, I understand it's very, very frustrating for you, and that's why I want to try and get you an answer, right? I want to get some answer in relation to the CAMS teams.
I'm allowed to interrupt, and I do apologise, but we're significantly behind our speaking slots.
The deputy,
Chair, with respect, Chair, just make a short contribution. Other members have speaking slots elsewhere, and we do all time our time. We always try and get our questions and answers within 10 minutes. We've had a supplementary slot by yourself in regard to waiting lists, and also from we have a second round, Chair. Is my point. It's not fair on other members.
What I'd ask is if this is acceptable, that the officials will come back to you with a written answer in relation to what's been done specifically in relation to CAMS. I'm mindful of that. But I'm also mindful of the fact that the deputy won't be back because she has parliamentary duties that she can't avoid. I'm mindful of that. I'm watching that. Okay, and we'll get in everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.